Hello, everyone. I am Dustin Childs, and welcome to the Patch Report for February of 2023. Coming at you live. It's been a while since I've done a live webcast talking about patches, but you know what? I'm back. I feel pretty good about myself, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We are live on multiple platforms, but if you are live on YouTube, go ahead and drop me a question if you have one concerning today's patches. And since we are on YouTube, I'm contractually obligated to please say subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, and hit that like button to let me know that you like me doing this stuff. So I'll do more of it if that's the sort of thing that you want. If not, well, I guess you're really not watching then, so it's okay. Anyway, let's get on to the release because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about from Adobe and Microsoft. Over 100 CVEs dropped today. So let's take a look at them, starting with what's on the blog. Where's the blog, you say? Well, go check out zerodayinitiative.com/blog, and you should find it there. So looking at the Adobe releases, they had 9 total patches addressing 28 total CVEs and a bunch of different products. Please note that 21 of those 28 came from this guy named Matt Powell, who works for the Zero Day Initiative. Pretty prolific researcher. Of the Adobe ones, none are under active attack, none are being actively exploited or publicly known at the time of release. If I had to focus on one, I'd probably say Photoshop, simply because it gets used more than the other ones. InDesign's also another one. But both of those are open and owned, so if you get a malicious file and open it with an affected version, then you get code execution at the level of the logged on user. So take a look at that. Like I said, all priority 3 from Adobe this month, and nothing under active attack. Moving on to Microsoft, we've got 75 new patches from Microsoft today with a bunch of different products, mostly in Windows operating system, of course, but some really interesting stuff as we dive into it, including 2 that are under active attack. So we got 2 0 days being patched, and the first is listed as an Office security feature bypass vulnerability. Now, this one is concerning to me because it's a security feature bypass that's being actively exploited. Come on, that's what security features are supposed to do, is like try to prevent that. The way it's written up, though, it sounds like a privilege escalation, so I'm guessing it's going to need to be combined with something else to really take over a system. But like I said, we're seeing it in the wild, and I think this was coming from either a Microsoft researcher or from their Mystic team, so that's the sort of thing that they're seeing out against their customers, so it's out there and in the wild. Speaking of in the wild, we've got one in the Common Log File System Driver. It's another EOP, and this one, this is the one that's being that was found by Mystic, which is the Threat Intelligence Center. So they get some pretty good telemetry as far as that goes, and I'm sure it's being combined with a code execution bug to spread malware of some sort. We haven't heard a lot about this beyond just this report, so I'm guessing it's relatively targeted at this point, but definitely do roll out that update quickly to make sure that that gets taken care of. Next up is a Word remote code execution bug. And normally, Word RCEs aren't that impressive. It takes you email a Word doc and whatever. You got to open it, and boom, whatever. Preview pane. Yeah, that's the fun part of this bug, is it relies on some RTF in the preview pane of Outlook. So just sending an email and having somebody view it in the preview pane is enough to get code execution at the level of logged on users. So that's very close to a 0-click. I kind of call that a half-click myself. Next up, we've got some Exchange server bugs, because of course we do. But the one I really want to call out is from a ZDI researcher named Pwn2Own, whose last name I'm not going to slaughter, because I always say it wrong. But the reason I called this one out, in addition to the other Exchange bugs, is this was really the result of an incomplete fix from an Exchange patch back in last fall. So if he figured out how to bypass it, there's a pretty good chance other people have figured out how to bypass it. Do want to note this requires authentication, so there is that, but if you can reach the Exchange PowerShell backend, which a lot of folks can, then you can take over an Exchange server. So take a look at oops, and I went to the wrong page. There we go. You can take a look at the table there in detail if you're interested in some in everything else that's going on. Let's look at all of the other bugs that are currently being fixed this month. See, there's a lot of them, 76, 75. Got to roll down here. I do want to point out this one medium severity bug. Like, what's a Microsoft bug rated medium? Well, it's an external bug that was patched back in 2019, and it affects HoloLens, but HoloLens really can't update anymore for this bug. So if you're using HoloLens, definitely check this out and consider something different. So looking at the other critical rated bugs, I got some CVSS 9.8s here. And then I kind of freak out, and then I go, oh, wait, it's PEEP. And that's the Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol. And if you're thinking to yourself, I haven't heard of that, well, a lot of people haven't. It's not really used very widely. What I am concerned about is the 9.8 bug in iSCSI. So if you're not familiar with iSCSI, that's Internet SCSI, or something along those lines. I forget the exact, but it used in storage area networks, SANs. So I've set up a lot of these in the past. If you're running a SAN, make sure you check with your SAN vendor to see if that update is available for your system. SANs, can get really touchy when it comes to updates, so definitely reach out to your vendor and make sure of that. We also have some SQL bugs or SQL bugs. I don't want to start the whole debate on how to pronounce it. So whichever one you agree with, that's the one I agree with. However, it requires you to connect to a malicious server via ODBC. Doesn't seem really likely. I do want to call it out though, because if you look at the bulletin, there's 7 or 8 different versions of SQL that you got to make sure you get the right version of the update for. So definitely make sure you're good there. And there are a couple other critical related stuff, but it's usually open and own in .NET and Visual Studio. Moving on to the other code execution bugs, I do want to note that half of the Microsoft release is remote code execution, which is that's a whole lot of RCEs. The Exchange bugs obviously are the ones that are going to get a lot of attention. I do believe almost all of them are authenticated, if not all of them. So not the end of the world, but still just a servicing headache to be sure. I know. Listen, and I mean this sincerely. Patch your Exchange servers. Okay, they get attacked all the time. If you're still running on-prem, first thing, figure out a migration path to get to O365. Second thing, test and deploy these updates. I know it's going to require downtime. We can get through it together. Okay, you and me, we're here. We got this. We can do this. Okay, I know I get a little passionate about patching. I'm sorry. Which, by the way, was the third choice for the name of this podcast, which is passionate about patching. But then I determined that was way too many P's in a broadcast name, so we weren't doing that. But I digest. Moving on, no print spooler bugs this month, but we do have bugs in the PostScript printer driver. So if you're sharing a system, sharing a printer on your system could get owned by an authenticated user. That's pretty interesting. More patches for SQL Server. Again, the servicing is what's more concerning than the actual risk there. So if you're running SQL, make sure that you're paying attention to your versioning information and getting the right patch for you. There's a couple bugs in 3D Builder and one in Print 3D that were discovered by that Matt Pell fellow again. He's a prolific all over the place. These are interesting because you don't get the patches through auto updates. You have to go through the Microsoft Store. So make sure that you understand that. I put some guidance in the blog on how to do that if you're not familiar with going through the store for apps. There's also an MS-HTML platform bug that came through ZDI. That one's pretty nifty as well. And then speaking of ZDI, Hussein Lotfi reported a Windows Media bug. So another code execution. Moving on, there's RCE in Azure DevOps Server. Now, in this case, the attacker needs run access to the pipeline, but Microsoft says not every pipeline is affected. Fantastic. How do I know which ones are affected and which ones that aren't? That's right. Because I don't know either, actually, and Microsoft provides no information on how to determine which pipelines may be affected. But know that not everyone is affected. But if it is, it can actually cause quite a bit of damage. The Dynamics bug's a little bit interesting too. It does require authentication, not a whole lot of unauth bugs this month, so that's good. But if you are able to exploit the Dynamics bug, you would be able to target files in the resources directory and execute Windows commands that are outside of Dynamics. That's pretty nifty. Again, authenticated, but pretty cool. Moving on to the EOP bugs this month, there's a much smaller amount, and most of these you have to have code execution on the system already. Then you run a program, escalate to system pretty much. I think every EOP bug this month was system. The first interesting one is an Azure App Service, and it does require authentication, like I said. You're doing a privilege escalation. But here's the neat thing. If you can exploit this, you can mess with other tenant stuff on the same Azure App Service fabric. So that's really cool because there's not a whole lot of, authentication, or there's not a whole lot of vetting when you like sign up for Azure. It's like, does the check clear? Yes, then you're vetted, and on to Azure you go. There's also a fix for Defender for IoT, which I didn't realize Defender had branched out into IoT, but good for it. However, it requires a new version of the software. It has to be installed through the management console. So if you're using Defender for IoT, not an automatic update on this one. So again, the people who shout, just patch it, not listening to you. We've got some guidance in the link to in our blog if you have any questions on that. There's also a security feature bypass in Defender for Endpoint worth mentioning. And the bug allows the attack surface reduction blocking feature to be bypassed when opening a malicious file. Now, I don't know entirely what the attack surface reduction blocking feature is designed to do, but I know it's designed to block things when opening a file. And now it doesn't. So make sure you get the patch for that, because it had one job and it fell down on that job. Almost all of the info disclosure bugs this month are just leaking random memory, except for one, and it's kind of a doozy. It's in the Azure Machine Learning Compute, and this was reported by a Trend Micro researcher, Nitesh Surana, I believe, of Project Nebula. And the vulnerability allows attackers to read, wait for this, clear text passwords from error logs. Nice. So we generally classify that as a bad thing, so definitely make sure you get that update. A bunch of 10 DOS bugs, but again, no information from Microsoft. I don't consider any of those too dangerous, but I wish I could get some information like, does it just kill the service or does it reboot the box? Because I know in ZDI, we purchased a bug recently that not only does it kill the box, it prevents it from like restarting. Like every time it restarts, boom, kills it again. It's a fun bug. Can't wait to talk about that one on the patch report in future. We got a spoofing bug in Power BI, and spoofing bug in OneNote, spoofing bugs, and then some cross-site scripting bugs in Dynamics 365 and Azure Ops. And that is it. That takes us through the entire thing. So, hey, happy Valentine's Day. By the way, I didn't say it. Also, happy Pitchers and Catchers Report to Spring Training Day. If you're a baseball fan like me, you know what that means, and it's one of the most romantic gifts that baseball can give you. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. This will be archived online, of course. Next month, March 14th, we will be back, probably a recorded version unless this gets a whole lot of pickup. But thanks for joining us. We've had a lot of fun doing this. Follow us on all of the socials for Pwn2Own Miami updates. I'm in Pwn2Own Miami right now and having a lot of fun. We've already awarded, I think, about $50,000 just this morning. Seen some really great research. We're going to see some more. So until next month, everyone, please stay safe, have a happy patching time, and may all your reboots be smooth and clean.